My father shoved my 9-year-old daughter away from the Christmas table and said, "That seat is for my real grandkid. Get out." She hit the hardwood in front of almost 20 relatives. Nobody moved, not even my mother. I did not scream or argue. I reached into my bag, pulled out a folder, and said 4 words. Why did my father suddenly turn pale? The sound of my daughter's knee hitting the hardwood was louder than the Christmas music in the living room. For 1 second, nobody moved. The ham was still in the middle of the table. Red candles burned beside my mother's good china, the set she only used at Christmas. Almost 20 relatives sat shoulder to shoulder around us. My daughter had only been trying to sit down. Her place card was already beside the chair near the head of the table. She smiled and reached for it. Then my father saw her. His face changed before he even spoke. "That seat is for my real grandkid." My daughter froze. He looked at her and added, "Get out." Then he put one hand on her shoulder and shoved. It was not some wild movement that almost made it worse. It was casual, a grown man's hand moving a 9-year-old child aside, as if she were simply in the way. Her heel caught the edge of the rug. She went down hard. Nobody moved. Not my sister. Not my mother. Not one person. Someone dropped a napkin. One of my aunts whispered, "Oh," so softly it sounded more like embarrassment than concern. My daughter looked up at me. She was not crying yet. She looked confused, as if she was still trying to understand what she had done wrong. Something inside me went very still. I had spent most of my life explaining my family's silence. Dad had a temper. Mom hated conflict. My sister did not want trouble. Everyone was just trying to keep the peace. But with my child on that floor, every excuse disappeared. Some families do not need anyone to order them to stay quiet. After enough years, people learn to lower their eyes and keep eating. I crossed the room and helped my daughter up. Her fingers grabbed my sleeve. I bent close and said, "I've got you." That mattered more than anything I was about to say to my father. With one arm around her, I reached into my bag. The folder had been there for days. I placed it on the table in front of my parents. My father stared at me. I said, "You have been served." He opened the first page. The color left his face. My mother's wineglass slipped from her hand and struck the table. I did not explain. I did not argue. I took my daughter and walked out. I had carried that folder for nearly a week, without knowing whether I would ever use it. My father needed only 3 seconds to make the decision for me. But to understand why those 4 words turned him pale, you have to understand that the chair at that Christmas table had existed in my family long before my daughter ever tried to sit in it. 2 weeks before Christmas, I was standing in my sister's living room while her daughter played on the rug with a box of plastic horses. My sister's house had changed over the past few years. The kitchen had been remodeled in soft gray stone. A newer SUV sat in the driveway. The furniture looked expensive, and framed family pictures covered one wall in matching white frames. I had noticed all of it before. I had never thought to ask where the money came from. My niece got bored and climbed onto the couch. My sister's laptop was sitting on the coffee table. Before I could stop her, she opened it and typed the password with the confidence of a child who had done it many times. I walked over to close the screen. Then I saw my grandfather's name. The document was already open. Walter Carter Family Trust. Under that was another heading. Beneficiary Distribution Summary. Then I saw my full legal name. For a few seconds, I just stood there. My first thought was that I had misunderstood it. Maybe it was an old draft. Maybe my name appeared for some reason that meant nothing. Families like mine teach you to doubt your own eyes before you question theirs. I did not search the computer. I did not open another file. I took one photograph of the page already on the screen. It showed the trust name, the beneficiary heading, and my name. And then I closed the laptop. When my sister came home, I said nothing. Years earlier, I would have confronted her before reaching my car. I used to think strength meant demanding an answer immediately. By then, I had learned something different. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do after finding a secret is not let the people keeping it know that you found it. 2 days later, I sat in a small law office across from an attorney who handled estate and trust disputes. I handed her my phone. She studied the photograph. If this is the controlling trust document, and you're a named beneficiary, your parents' opinion does not erase your name. Then she added, "Ink matters more than family opinion." She made no promises. She needed the actual trust version, successor trustee records, an accounting, and the distribution history. For the first time, I did not ask my parents what was true. I asked someone independent to verify it. A few days later, my attorney called. "I need you to come in." 2 days later, I was sitting across from my attorney when she turned a document toward me. "This is the controlling trust," she said. My eyes went straight to my name. There it was, in plain black ink, nothing dramatic, no note beside it, no condition attached, just my full legal name, listed beside my sister's as a beneficiary. The strange part was how ordinary it looked. I had spent most of my life arguing with myself about whether I truly belonged in that family. My grandfather, apparently, had never needed the argument. My attorney explained the rest in simple terms. My grandfather had created the trust. My sister and I were both named in it. After he died, my parents became the successor co-trustees. That means they control the money, she said. It does not mean they own it. As a beneficiary, I had the right to ask for an accounting, where the money went. Who approved each distribution, what remained. She recommended filing a petition for a full accounting, preserving the records, and temporarily restricting any questionable distributions until we knew more. Then she looked at me carefully. "Do not warn them before we preserve what we can." That sentence made my stomach tighten. Part of me still wanted to drive to my parents' house and ask them to explain. Another part finally understood that an explanation was not the same thing as evidence. The petition was filed before Christmas. Formal service would be handled through the proper process. My attorney gave me a copy in a plain folder and told me to keep it secure. I carried it with me on Christmas Eve. The practical reason was simple. I had an appointment after the holiday, and I did not want sensitive papers sitting unattended in my apartment all day. But that was not the whole truth. Some part of me wanted something in my bag that was stronger than my father's voice. Even then, I was not ready to use it. I kept telling myself the same old things. After Christmas, do not make a scene. Do not ruin the holiday. Just get through one more dinner. Families like mine can turn keeping the peace into a moral duty. The person who finally sets a boundary gets blamed for breaking the family, while nobody asks whose silence had been paying for that peace all along. So I drove to my parents' house with the folder in my bag and every intention of leaving it there. I had already decided I would wait. Then my father put his hand on my daughter's shoulder, and in that instant, all the waiting I had practiced for years disappeared. My daughter did not say much in the car. At first I thought it was because her knee hurt. She sat with both hands tucked into the sleeves of her hoodie, staring through the passenger window while Christmas lights blurred past us. Then she asked, very quietly, "Is it because I'm not real?" I pulled over. For a second, I could not trust myself to keep driving. "No, listen to me. You are real. You are mine, and you never have to earn a place beside me." She nodded, but not right away. She looked down at her hands first. I used to think family wounds took years to pass from one generation to the next. I was wrong. Sometimes it takes one sentence, spoken by the right person at the worst possible moment. When we got home, I helped her into pajamas and an old sweatshirt. I wrapped an ice pack in a dish towel and laid it across her knee. Then I made cocoa with too many marshmallows and turned on a Christmas movie. Neither of us really watched. My phone started buzzing before the opening credits were over. My sister left a message asking what I had done. My mother begged me not to do this on Christmas. An aunt told me to call my father and fix things before I embarrassed everyone. Then one cousin sent a private message. He said he had seen what happened, and if my attorney needed a witness, he would tell the truth. I appreciated it. I also wished he had found that courage while my daughter was still on the floor. Later, my sister posted online that some people would destroy a family over money. I read the comments once, then closed the app. Not one person asked whether my daughter was hurt. That told me more than the post did. Then my father's text arrived. You want court? Fine. Tell the judge why you deserve my father's money when you're not even my daughter. I stared at the screen until my hands stopped shaking. Then I saved it. I did not answer. That night, I made my first real boundary. No visits, no calls with my daughter, no surprise drop-ins. Anything involving the trust would go through my attorney. They might have taken money that should have been mine. They were not going to take my daughter's sense of safety too. The next morning, my attorney called. She had read my father's message. Don't answer him, she said, and come to my office. We just got the initial trust snapshot. Until then, the betrayal had lived mostly in memories, insults, and questions. Numbers were harder to explain away. I asked what that meant. It means we finally have numbers. My attorney slid a single page across the desk. The trust was worth about $480,000 when your grandfather died. I read the number twice. Then I looked at the next line. The intended split was 50-50. Half for my sister, half for me. Roughly $240,000 should have been mine. The current balance was about $38,000. I stared at that number until it stopped looking like money. It felt more like proof that someone had been editing my memories for years. My attorney turned to the preliminary distribution list. She did not show me 20 transactions. She showed me 3. About $72,000 had gone toward a down payment connected to my sister's house. Another $41,600 had gone toward a vehicle purchase. Then she pointed to a third line, $18,500. The description read, Family Housing Assistance. That one hit differently. I remembered the month because I had been scared. Someone had broken into our apartment building, and I was trying to move my daughter somewhere safer. I had asked my parents for $6,000 to cover a security deposit and the first month's rent. My father had looked at me and said, You made your choices, figure it out. I had believed they could not help. Now I was looking at a record showing that, during that same period, money from the trust had been labeled as housing assistance and used somewhere else. The missing money made me angry. What hurt more was realizing they had not simply refused to help me. They had used resources my grandfather left for me, then treated my struggle as proof that I had failed. My attorney let me sit with that before speaking. This is only an initial snapshot, she said. We still need the statements, trustee records, approvals, and transfer authorizations. Your parents will have a chance to explain. I looked at her. Could this somehow be a mistake? She did not rush to reassure me. One transaction can be an error. A pattern needs documents. That answer steadied me. For most of my life, my question had been, why don't they love me? Sitting in that office, the question changed. What did they do? When did they do it? And who approved it? Before I left, my attorney held back one page. There's one thing I don't want to speculate about until I have the original approvals. What thing? Who signed them? I walked out, still believing that whatever my father had done, my mother had at least only stood by and watched. I did not know that belief had only a few days left. 3 days later, my attorney called me back to her office. This time, she did not hand me a stack of papers. She placed one page in front of me and tapped the authorization column. The first signature was my mother's. I stared at it. For a second, I told myself, maybe she had signed once without understanding what it meant. My attorney turned the page. My mother's signature was there again. Then a third page. Again. The approvals covered the house payment, the vehicle purchase, and several distributions labeled as family assistance. I sat very still. For most of my life, I had protected my mother inside my own mind. My father was the cruel one. My mother was afraid of him. She stayed quiet because she hated conflict. Those signatures forced me to use a different word. Choice. I had spent nearly 40 years calling her silence weakness. Now I had documents showing that, at least sometimes, she had participated. My attorney kept her voice careful. Her signature doesn't tell us what she was thinking. It tells us she approved the transaction. That mattered. I did not need guesses anymore. I needed facts. That afternoon, my mother left me a voicemail. She said my father was willing to forgive me if I stopped now. Forgive me. Then she said, continuing the case could affect my daughter too. People might start asking whether she really belonged in the family. That was the moment my anger changed. They had used the question of blood against me for years. Now they were willing to place the same poison in front of a 9-year-old child. A few minutes later, my father texted me, "Withdraw the petition, and we can handle this privately. Keep going, and I'll put the paternity issue on the record." I did not answer. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to my attorney. When I was younger, I thought silence meant losing an argument. Age taught me something else. Sometimes the strongest response is to let people keep talking until their own words become evidence. I called my attorney. "Don't negotiate away the accounting." "Good," she said, "because the preservation hearing is tomorrow morning." Then she added, "And if your father wants to tell a judge you're not his daughter, he'll have to explain why that changes a trust that names you specifically." For the first time, that threat did not make me want to run. It made me want to hear him say it in a room he could not control. If you're still listening, please leave a comment below and tell me how satisfied you are with the story so far, so I know there are still people walking beside me through this journey. Your presence is my greatest encouragement as I continue toward the final part. The next morning, I walked into a courtroom smaller than I had imagined. There were no cameras, no jury, no crowd waiting for drama, just fluorescent lights, wooden benches, a judge behind a raised desk, and the quiet shuffle of papers. My father wore a dark suit. My mother sat beside him with both hands folded in her lap. My sister was there too, but she kept her eyes down when I walked past. For years, I had believed my father's power came from his voice. Sitting in that room, I realized most of it came from being surrounded by people who had already agreed to be afraid of him. His attorney tried to make the case about family. She talked about biological lineage, family intent, and what my grandfather must have meant when he created the trust. She argued that the petition should be dismissed because the money was meant for his biological descendants. My attorney did not argue about love, loyalty, or who belonged at Christmas dinner. She opened the trust document. She is named. That was almost all she needed. The judge looked at the other side and asked a simple question. If my grandfather intended to limit my interest based on a biological condition, where was that condition written? Their attorney turned pages. She could not point to one. The judge did not decide the entire case that morning. He did something more important first. He kept the preservation order in place. Questionable transfers were restricted. My parents were ordered to provide a full accounting, including statements, trustee approvals, and supporting records. For once, my father's version of the family did not control the room. The document did. When we stepped into the hallway, he came toward me. My attorney shifted slightly closer, enough to make it clear he was not going to touch me. My father lowered his voice. "You think a piece of paper makes you family?" I looked at him. "No, that's the first thing you've said that I agree with." Then I walked away. I did not feel triumphant. I felt something quieter. For the first time, the word family had started separating itself from the word blood. A week later, the accounting arrived. It was much thicker than I expected. My attorney called before I had even finished my morning coffee. "The money trail is worse than the preliminary snapshot." Then she paused. "And there's something else. Some of these distributions were recorded as if you benefited from them." I gripped the phone. I had never received that money. Not $1 of those supposed benefits had ever reached me. The full accounting did more than confirm where the money went. It showed how the story had been written. There were entries labeled family assistance, housing support, and education or medical expenses. On paper, they sounded generous. They made it look as if my parents had been helping everyone. They had not. My attorney walked me through the bank records, approval forms, and dates. The money tied to those entries had gone toward my sister's household, my parents' expenses, and purchases I had never benefited from. She placed two dates together. The first was the day I had asked for $6,000 to move my daughter somewhere safer. The second was the trust distribution for $18,500, labeled Family Housing Assistance. The money had not gone to me. It had gone toward an expense connected to my sister. People think financial records are cold and objective. I learned that even numbers can tell a false story if nobody is forced to prove what each line means. My parents had watched me struggle and called it the result of my choices. Now, I knew some of that struggle happened while money meant for me was making someone else's life easier. By the final hearing, the pattern was hard to hide. My parents' attorney tried again to bring up bloodlines and biological family. The judge stopped her. The trust named me. The issue was not whether my father believed I was his daughter. It was whether the trustees had followed their duties, accounted for the money, and made proper distributions. The records answered that. The court found that my parents had breached their duties as trustees. They were ordered to restore what should have gone to me, along with interest, legal costs, and additional surcharges. The total was about $368,000. My father looked stunned. My sister went still. My mother stared at the table. I had imagined winning would feel like fireworks. It did not. It felt like taking off a heavy backpack I had carried so long that I had forgotten what it was like to stand without it. That was when I understood the difference between justice and revenge. The court could not give me a different childhood. It could not make my parents love me better, but it could say what they had done had consequences. When I got home, I opened a drawer and saw the paternity test paperwork that had been sitting there for weeks. The case was over. I did not need DNA to receive what was mine, but the question my father had hung over my life was still there. I was not taking that test for him. I was taking it for the woman who still heard his voice every time she looked in the mirror. The lawsuit was over when I finally opened the drawer. The paternity paperwork was still there, exactly where I had left it. I did not need it for the case. The trust named me, and the court had already decided what my parents owed. No test could add to that, and no test could take it away. I chose an independent laboratory anyway. Not for my father. Not for the money. For me. I wanted to know whether the question that had followed me through birthdays, holidays, and ordinary family dinners had ever been based on anything real. The results came by email on a Tuesday afternoon. My daughter was at school. I was standing at the kitchen counter with a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. I opened the message. Then I read it again. Biological relationship consistent with father and daughter. For a long moment, I did not move. I had expected relief. Instead, I felt cold. If he had not been my father, maybe part of me could have told myself his suspicion had at least come from some piece of truth. But he was my father. He had punished me for decades over a question he could have answered years ago. That was when something finally became clear. Some people do not really want an answer. They want the question, because the question gives them permission to keep punishing someone. The test did not prove my value. It did not make me more worthy of kindness. I had been named in the trust because my grandfather chose to name me, and I deserved basic decency no matter what a laboratory said. But the result answered who my father was. It did not decide who I was. I forwarded the report to both of my parents. I wrote one sentence. You built my life around a lie. Here is the answer. Then I stopped. No argument. No explanation. No invitation to respond. A week later, my doorbell rang. My daughter was at school. I looked through the peephole and saw my mother standing alone on the porch. I opened the door only a few inches. She looked tired. Your father wants to see Ella. I kept my hand on the edge of the door. Why now? My mother swallowed. Because now we know. I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny in it. The words sat between us. And for the first time, I understood exactly how much they still had not learned. I opened the door only a few inches. My mother stood on the porch with her hands clasped in front of her. Your father has changed, she said. I said nothing. He feels terrible. He wants to make this right. I had heard versions of that sentence my whole life. My mother had always been the translator. My father felt bad, so I should forgive him. My father was angry, so I should be careful. My father was embarrassed, so I should make things easier. She was still taking his feelings and placing them in my hands, like they were my responsibility. This time, I let her keep talking. After a long pause, she told me what had happened before I was born. There had been another man. One mistake, she called it. My father found out, or suspected enough to believe I might not be his child. They never did a test. The question simply stayed. I was ashamed, she said. I thought I deserved his anger. Her voice broke when she added, I didn't realize I was letting you pay for it. I believed that she felt guilty. But guilt does not erase the choices a person makes while carrying it. My mother had been afraid of losing her marriage. My father had been angry, and somehow, year after year, I became the place where both of them put those feelings. Then she said the words that finally made everything clear. Now we know you're his. I looked at her. It shouldn't have mattered. She went quiet. You were my mother whether I was his or not. Her eyes filled, but I kept going. And a DNA test doesn't make him safe for my daughter. She asked for one more chance, not for herself, she said, for the family. Years earlier, that would have worked on me. I would have mistaken another chance for kindness and another boundary crossed for forgiveness. But I had spent too long learning the difference. When I was younger, I thought a boundary only counted if the other person understood it. I know better now. A boundary is still a boundary when the person on the other side calls it cruel. No, I said. That was all. I closed the door gently. A few months later, my attorney called. My parents did not have enough liquid assets to satisfy the judgment. They would have to sell the thing my father had spent years calling the family legacy. The house, the dining room, the Christmas table, and the chair that had once decided who was allowed to belong. 4 months later, the house was sold. My father had always called it the family legacy. It was where birthdays were hosted, Arguments were buried, and Christmas dinners were arranged as if nothing ugly had ever happened there. When my attorney told me the sale had gone through, I did not drive past the house. I did not take a picture. I did not post anything online. I had spent enough years looking toward that house, wondering whether I would be welcomed inside. I was not going to spend more time watching how they were forced out. When the money finally reached me, it did not feel like a prize. I paid what needed to be paid. I made our housing more secure. I built an emergency fund, set aside money for my daughter's future, and kept the rest where it could give us something I had never associated with money before: choice. Financial independence does not make you powerful because you can buy more things. It gives you power because when someone mistreats you, you do not have to ask them for permission to leave. We stayed no contact. Over time, my daughter slept better. She laughed more easily. Christmas stopped being a word that made her shoulders tighten. The next December, our dinner was small. I made roast chicken and mashed potatoes. The plates did not match. Christmas music played softly in the living room, and my daughter made place cards from folded paper and colored markers. She made one extra for an older neighbor who lived alone. When dinner was ready, my daughter pulled out the chair beside mine and sat down. She did not ask if she could sit there. She did not look around to see whether someone else deserved it more. She just sat. I had spent most of my life trying to earn a chair at my father's table. It took me nearly 40 years to understand that I was allowed to build a different table. What made ours different was not who owned it. It was that no child sitting there had to prove she was real enough to belong. I used to think blood answered the question of who belonged to whom. Now I think blood only tells us who we are related to. What people do when we are vulnerable tells us whether they deserve to be called family. My value did not begin the day a DNA test proved my father wrong. It had always been there. I had simply spent too many years waiting for him to confirm it. If you had been in my place, would you have given your parents one more chance, or closed the door for good? And were you satisfied with the way my story ended? Tell me what you think.